Hi everyone, I'm Junde from App. I'm really encouraged by the size of this attendance today, so I'm going to take a photo, show it to my boss. Okay, so so today, besides sharing with you some stuff about our company and the latest trends, I'm also here to give out some free gifts. So we have this App poker cards. You might have heard of it. It's playing cards, and also it's the top 52 publishers by revenue on iOS and Google Play last year. So after my presentation, feel free to come up to me. I have limited sets, so ladies first, and then first come, first serve. Okay, so first, let me tell you a little bit about our company. Then we'll go straight to some market trends. So today, App is the global leading provider of market analytics and market data. So it's something similar to like a Nielsen or ComScore for the app stores. And today, to provide accurate market data worldwide, you really need to have people and offices and users worldwide. So because US is one unique market. US affects a lot of Western Europe. US market affects Singapore and Hong Kong and some parts of Southeast Asia. But outside of that, you have China, Japan, Korea, which are very unique markets. So we also have offices in Beijing, Tokyo, and next month we are opening an office in Seoul. So these are some of our users worldwide, because our data and analytics is trusted by the biggest brands worldwide, not just in games, but non-games, VCs, media agencies, and other companies in the mobile space. Okay, last slide about our company. Today we provide 3 products across some of these platforms. The first product is called Analytics. It helps you track your sales and downloads across your different countries. And this is totally free and does not come with an SDK. That's why it's used by over 220,000 apps. Next product, which some of you might be familiar with, it's called Store Stats. Basically, if you try to do research on the app stores, you cannot do too much by looking at the iTunes and Google Play pages. So because it's hard to navigate across countries, and you can only look at data from one day. You cannot look at historical data. So we have all this historical data archived on our Store Stats. For any app, you can look at the entire historical ranking across any country on the app stores. And our premium product is called Intelligence. We are able to provide the most accurate estimates of downloads and revenues for every single app in the world, broken down by country. So this intelligence, I can raise two examples of how it's used. For instance, let's say I have a budget of 100,000 USD. Should I put all this into ad budget for the US, or can I get a better return if I put 30K in Russia, 50K in Korea, and 20K in Thailand? This kind of stuff. And also, it's also important to know, for bigger companies, it's important to know your market share. So if, for instance, I'm number 1, I want to know how close number 2 is catching up. Is number 2 catching up, or is it getting further away? So these are the kind of stuff that market intelligence can help you with. Okay, so that's all about our company. We'll go straight to talk about some App Store trends. First of all, some overviews. It's obvious that games are driving the App Store markets today. And secondly, iOS and Google Play are already very close if you compare game downloads. But iOS is still monetizing much better than Google Play. It's over 2x of Google Play's revenue. However, Google Play's revenue is growing very quickly, and it's much more concentrated on games than iOS. And finally, the in-app purchase model has gained a lot of momentum, primarily adopted by games. So first, let's look at a global overview of iOS and Google Play. Here we're looking at game downloads for the past 6 months. So you see that there's a rise of, firstly, you see that both iOS and Google Play are very closely matched in terms of downloads. And it increased a lot during December and January. In February, we saw a decline, and then we looked at last year and the year before that, we saw, hey, there was also a decline. Then we thought about it, what could be the cause of this? Anyone has any idea? Okay, I can't really hear, but anyway. So I think there might be a simple answer. February has 28 days. So it's 3 days less than any other month, and 3 days is actually 10% of the month. So you can actually see almost 10% decline. So it's actually, if you look at revenues on downloads per day, there might actually be no seasonal decline in February. So if we were to look at revenues, however, for games, on iOS and Google Play, firstly, you see that, okay, in September last year, the difference was almost 4 times. So although Google Play still has some distance to catch up, they have caught up to almost just 2.6, 2.5 times in March, and this has increased further in April. And also you see that in February, although iOS revenue for games declined, Google Play maintained their level of revenues. Okay, so now let's look at trends across a few countries. So firstly, some highlights. The two of the biggest markets in the world, it's US and Japan. And these two markets, apps do very well across both iOS App Store and Google Play. In China, it's also a very huge market. On iOS, it's a very fast increasing market in terms of revenue. But for Android, Google Play is not really available there. You can only download free apps there. You cannot download paid apps. You cannot download freemium apps. And besides, it doesn't have a huge market share. But Android is huge in China. And we would really, if you don't have an office in China, it's best advised to work with a local partner, distribution partner. In South Korea, Google Play is much bigger than iOS. And in other countries in general, iOS is much bigger in terms of revenue than Google Play. And at the bottom, we see some emerging markets for games. China iOS revenue has shot up a lot. We'll show you some details later. And in terms of downloads, we see a lot of downloads in a lot of developing countries, especially on Google Play. For instance, Russia, Brazil, and Mexico. And in Asian countries, a huge proportion of the revenue from the App Stores and Google Play is concentrated on games. Okay, so first let us compare Google Play and iOS downloads in different countries. So firstly, you see that if you were to look at iOS, you see that US and China are driving almost 40% of the worldwide game downloads. And US is possibly one of the most, okay, US and Japan are one of the two countries where iOS and Google Play downloads are almost on par. And then you can see that for other than the US, in a lot of countries, Google Play game downloads have already exceeded iOS game downloads. So this can potentially set the path for future revenue growth. Google Play does not have a lot of revenue in a lot of countries because perhaps it's because of some inconvenience in the payment solutions. So now let's look at iOS and Google Play revenue comparison in different countries. So firstly, you see that on the left side is Google Play, on the right side is iOS App Store revenue. On Google Play, the top 3 countries of US, Japan, and Korea are driving almost 80% of worldwide games revenue. In another view, you can say that Asia Pacific is driving more revenue than the rest of the world, because with Japan and South Korea combined. So like as we saw just now, Google Play has a lot of downloads, game downloads in a lot of countries, exceeding that of iOS. But revenue-wise, it's not really making the numbers yet. Why is this so? Sorry, let's backtrack a little. So this is showing perhaps the top 10. Actually, if we look at top 11 to 20, you see a lot of countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, a lot of developing countries, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. All these countries, they have a lot of downloads because Android as an open platform, manufacturers are able to manufacture cheaper phones that can penetrate these markets. But because people don't have credit cards, and Google Play payment is not yet able to penetrate these markets. Google Play is missing a huge chunk of the 12 to 18-year-olds market. So what had happened in Japan and Korea was that Google Play had introduced carrier billing. So in Japan and Korea, you can pay through SMS on Google Play. So if Google Play starts to implement this in a lot of countries like this, we can possibly foresee huge revenue growth. Because imagine if you just pay 99 cents to your phone bill, it's not something you think seriously about. But if I have to swipe my card for 99 cents, I'll think about it. I'll think twice about it. And also, if you look at the markets of Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, these countries all had a consumer history of purchasing content on using SMS payment, using carrier payment. They used to, even when we were in the feature phone era, they used to buy a lot of ringtones, wallpapers, and content. So here we look at how the markets have been changing over the past 1 year. We look at this March compared against last March. So you see that for game downloads, surprisingly, Russia is one of the largest growing markets. It has jumped up 3 spots. And this is for iOS. And for iOS games revenue, China has jumped up 4 spots. So this is very interesting growth. Some reasons we can mention are, okay, firstly, China used to be bugged by a lot of jailbreak issues. And then iOS 6 was introduced the middle of last year, and iOS 6 came in with a lot of new features. A lot of Chinese consumers really liked the new features, and they upgraded their iPhones. And when they upgraded their iPhones, they suddenly realized, oh, there's no jailbreak for iOS 6. So they were stuck with it for at least six months, and a lot of them got used to paying for apps through the official App Store. And previously, not just the jailbreak problem, another problem was that a lot of Chinese consumers don't have Visa cards or MasterCards, and it was also kind of, Apple also introduced some form of local payments, local bank solutions, but it was not direct. You cannot pay directly through the phone. So that was also inconvenient. So if we were to look at Google Play, again, Russia has been shooting up in terms of game downloads, as well as Brazil and Mexico. And for Google Play revenue, Korea and Japan have overtaken the US. And also you see Hong Kong at number 8, and Hong Kong at number 10. Taiwan is interesting because paid apps just returned to Taiwan in March. And Taiwan is not in the top 10, which means that top 10 for downloads, which means Taiwan could have a very good ARPU. Next, we look at revenue per download in different countries. This is similar to ARPU. So we take the gross revenue in different countries and divide by the gross downloads. So you see the worldwide average for iOS is bigger than Google Play. But in terms of the top country, Japan, they're actually doing a little bit more on Google Play. Because when you have carrier billing and when most people have credit cards, there's really no difference in terms of convenience of payment across 2 platforms. And then you see South Korea, and interestingly enough, you see Singapore and Hong Kong, which these 2 countries weren't really in the top 10 previously. I think this could be the result of Candy Crush and together with the collaboration with Facebook. Because one interesting thing I observed in Singapore and Hong Kong, a lot of middle-aged men and women, even my dad, who is 60 years old, they're playing Candy Crush. China has also gone up a lot. In this time last year, it was probably less than 10 cents. So now it's 30 cents. Next, we look at some device trends on iOS. We are only able to do this for iOS because iOS has 2 different charts for iPhone and iPad. Google Play might implement this soon, and then when that time comes, we'll be able to do the same. So here we look at iPhone versus iPad downloads in different countries. So you see that across all countries, iPad is driving almost 30% of downloads. And one very unique thing is about Japan. Japan has very small iPad penetration in terms of device ownership and downloads and of course revenue. If we were to look at revenue, so iPad drives 1/3 of revenue worldwide for games. And if you compare it to the downloads, it means that they have a higher ARPU on iPad, which is quite easy to understand because when you have a better experience, bigger screen, you tend to pay more. And also, if you look at the US is driving 40% of worldwide games iPad revenue. Next, we look at some subcategory trends. So these are the top game subcategories worldwide. So if you're thinking of building games, what kind of categories should I build for? So if you look at downloads, the biggest downloads categories are action and arcade. But if you look at game revenue, the biggest categories are the more heavier genres of RPG simulation. But one common thing we see here is action games. Action games will be games like Temple Run, Infinity Blade, Injustice, and so on. So these have a capability of reaching mass audiences, but also hook in some users with high ARPU. So next we look at Google Play. One thing to note about Google Play is that they don't have an RPG category. They don't have a simulation category. We don't know why is that so. So a lot of strategy games, MMO games, those publishers, they categorize the games under the brain and puzzle category. So one thing to note, interesting thing to note that is the arcade and action category is has the highest downloads and revenue on Google Play. While Brain and Puzzle, which contains most of the heavy MMORPG games, it's in second place for revenue. Next, finally, we look at top publishers and apps. So since last year, around October or November, we've launched a series. Every month, we've launched a big report on our blog. It's called App Annie Index, appannie.com/index. In this index, we chart all the monthly top global apps in terms of games and non-games. And then we will publish this every month so that people can keep track of the latest changes in the market, latest global leaders of the market. So first, let's look at the top publishers of March this year. Firstly, some highlights. So Puzzle & Dragons, firstly, is still the top game by revenues on iOS and Google Play. Candy Crush reached #1 spot on iOS downloads, and this is very significant because actually, although here we are only showing you, okay, I'll explain that later. Okay, top publishers, EA and King are both on the top 10 in on iOS and Google Play. And EA's success came from a few new apps like Real Racing 3 and Simpsons Tapped Out, which they recently launched on Google Play. Okay, so this is the top iOS publishers by game downloads on iOS in March. So here we include subsidiary companies, like EA would include Chilango. So that's why you see 984 apps. So Rovio moved up 4 places to #2 because of their release of the Angry Birds and also Croods. If you look at Google Play publishers, top ranking, it's Rovio and Imangi, a lot of casual game downloads. It's also interesting to note that EA has started to push on Google Play. You see them jumping 48 spots. Next, we look at revenue. Supercell is #1 in the world with 2 apps. Gung Ho is #2 with 8 apps, although most of the revenue is concentrated on 1 app. And no surprises here, you see a lot of the biggest companies making the most money on iOS games. If you look at Google, and also you can see that they come from a variety of US, European, and Asian countries. However, if you look at Google Play, it used to be mainly Japanese and Korean companies, but now you see that King, Kabam, and EA have entered the top 10 as well. So now we look at the top games. So you see that Candy Crush has become, it's already the top downloaded game on iOS in March. And Real Racing 3, the new release, had jumped 67 spots to become #2. If you look at Google Play game downloads, one thing that's interesting to note is that a lot of companies that are not huge companies, not the corporations you know of, they managed to make it into the top 10. So Google Play might be more friendly for indies. You see Fingersoft, you see Zake, Neki, Lotham, and so on, and Kilu. Another thing is that you see Fingersoft, with their huge hit Hill Climb Racing, they were able to hinge on their success and transfer a lot of downloads into their new game, Benji Bananas. If you look at the top iOS games revenue, Puzzle & Dragons has the single top revenue. But for Supercell, with the combination of Clash of Clans and Heyday, they are still bigger than Gung Ho in terms of revenues. And one thing to also mention is that Candy Crush Saga is at #3 here, but you saw that they were already #1 by worldwide downloads in March. So actually this is, I can also reveal that in our index, which is coming out very soon for the month of April, Candy Crush on iOS has overtaken Clash of Clans as the worldwide top grossing revenue game. And for Google Play, it's mainly Japanese and Korean games. And the new entrant is Simpsons from EA. It used to be a huge top grossing hit on iOS, and now it has made its impact on Google Play. Okay, Okay, so that's all we have to share today. This is some of our the links to our website, free analytics tool, free store stats, and very important to note, App and Index, where we provide a lot of free information. Yep. So that's all. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thanks. Hello. I have a question about carrier billing for Google Play. What do you think is going to be the impact for emerging markets? Obviously, everyone thinks that the moment it happens, it's going to open the floodgates, but emerging markets have a very high proportion of prepaid users. How is that going to impact the monetization?
It depends on culture. If you look at Southeast Asia and China, a lot of these countries where the consumers had a history of paying for content on feature phones, Java phones. So when Google Play when Google Play implements carrier billing, I think there will be a huge increase in revenue. But it's so interesting to note that Google Play has already implemented carrier billing in countries, in Western European countries and the US, and also Russia. So I'm quite puzzled to understand why revenues have not shot up in these countries. It's a lot about culture, I guess. And also, Android, it's an open platform, it has cheaper phones, it tends to penetrate more of the, like you said, emerging markets, and not just emerging markets, but second and third tier cities in the emerging markets. Because in these cities, people might be mistaken to think that, okay, people with lower incomes don't spend on mobile. That might be wrong, because people with lower income cannot afford to go to the pubs or clubs to have fun. So instead, paying $1, $2 on the mobile phone via carrier billing, this is very convenient, and it's something that occurs very naturally to them. So they are happy could spend on the phone. So we see this a lot in China, especially in the second and third tier cities, where they pay for a lot of Android apps, and especially a lot of casual games even, via carrier billing. So I think there's a market for carrier billing, but it really needs to address the right audience. They have to have a history. You can look at when we were in the feature phone era, were they buying content? Were they buying ringtones and wallpapers and such? Yep.
Hello. You didn't talk about Amazon or Windows. Can you mention a little bit what you see in those stores?
We do not have substantial data and analysis to comment about Amazon yet, but on our website you can already track some Amazon stats. So I'd say that it's probably still behind Google Play and iOS. Okay, one more question. Confine it to iOS and Google Play.
Hi, just to clarify, you mentioned that for Korea the monetization is better for Androids. Can I just clarify if this is on a per capita basis, as compared, Androids compared to iOS? If you are an Android user, your propensity to spend is bigger in Korea.
Okay, so today our stats are based on downloads and revenues. We do not have stats on particular users. So what we can look at is here. So if you look at revenue per download, Google Play, iOS actually does better in terms of ARPU. So average download, you get more on iOS. But the Google Play market is much, much bigger than iOS in Korea. That's why, in terms of market size, you still make much more there. And also because the ease of payment, you also get more revenue. Okay, thank you very much.